Hello everybody, it's Peter Ryan here from Fluent Leadership, and I'm joined today by Karen Schmidt from Let's Grow. Good morning, Karen.
Morning, Pete. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for joining me for our little bit of a conversation around all things management, leadership, career transition, and I think it's going to be great. So, Karen, for a start, could you maybe just give us a little bit of your background and what your main sort of focus areas are and how you assist organisations and leaders?
Sure. Well, my main background has been in human resource management, and along the way I discovered a love for training and went and did a degree in adult education and ended up starting my own consulting business. So over the years, I've been a trainer, facilitator, coach, professional speaker. I'm an author. And along the way, as in any business, what I do has changed as my clients' needs have changed. And I spent a lot of time looking at how people can enjoy their careers more, how leaders can be more effective. And that brings me to where I am now, where I focus a lot on coaching-based programs. So whether that's for a team of leaders or for an individual who is going, I like my career, but what's next? Or maybe something happens and they can't continue in that career for whatever reason. So that's where I spend most of my time now, is helping people have not just careers that are okay, but ones that really work to their strengths and where they feel they can make the most difference.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. Now, I've been a bit of a follower of your career and your publishing career as well, and a little bit old school, but I've got hard copies of several of your books, actually. It's a little bit sort of 1999, isn't it? So, and you very generously shared with me your latest book in ebook format, Thrive. So that's sort of taking a lot of the concepts that you've been working on over many, many years, and it's all about sort of tooling leaders up to ensure that they have their teams as engaged, collaborative, high performing, and innovative. Can you talk us a little bit through about your motivation for Thrive?
So I've spent a lot of my time in business helping organisations to develop what we call their frontline leaders, their team leaders, their supervisors. Yep. Also sometimes working with more senior leaders, often to help them help that group of people. And what I found is that a lot of the people develop bad habits, partly because they haven't been given any development. So they're just trying to make it up as they go along and doing what they think is the right thing. But as you and I know, that just because I like to be led a certain way doesn't mean that it works for everybody else. Now, in doing this work, I found that using models and metaphors was really helpful for my audiences. So to try to keep it with good theory behind what I give them, but also making sure that it was really practical. Somebody who's on the front line leading a team in a warehouse or in an office or out in the field is not interested so much in high-level theories. They want to know, well, what do I do when this person does this?
Yeah.
So I found that using a lot of metaphors was really helpful, and the one that I started with, which inspired the name of the business, in fact, is the idea that a leader is like a gardener. So the real, what I call the foundation skills of being a team leader are, the same sort of things that gardeners do. You've got to have good soil, which is the culture. You've got to pick the right plants. You've got to water and fertilize. And I'd been using that model for quite a long time. But then I started to have clients who would say, well, we've put people through those foundation skills, and I'd come up with a set of what I thought were 5 skills that were a good place to start, knowing that, of course, there are many more than that. And then they started asking, well, what's next? And so from that, that's where I developed the Thrive model, so that how they could go, effectively from surviving to thriving. The difference between, I used to say, you might have a plant, let's say it's a peace lily. Everybody has one of these in their office, those beautiful big green leaves that, if you're lucky, every now and then gets one of those lovely white flowers.
Yep. When
the leaves look all healthy, that's you sort of surviving. The plant's not dead if the plant represents your team, but thriving is, can you get it to flower? So that was sort of the motivation. So then I came up with 2 other skill sets that I would introduce team leaders to. And the next one was what we call challenge skills. So foundations are all about, well, if everything's going okay, but what if I've got a challenging person or challenging situation or challenging events going on? What if I want to challenge my team to step up? How do I challenge myself to step up? And so I looked around for, well, what's a metaphor that people could relate to, but that also was relatable for me, that was relevant for me. And I came up with the idea that challenges are like being a driver. Now, I love driving, just like I love gardening, and I own an MX-5. So, that idea of zooming around and on the windy roads, how do you meet the challenge? And so then came the next set of skills for challenges. And then the third set, which if you look at people who make it to the really senior ranks of any organisation, or whether they're volunteer or paid, what you know about them is they're really good collaborators. They've got that ability to bring people together to not just say, well, I'm the leader, but I'm also a collaborator. I can collaborate with my team. I can collaborate with the rest of the leadership team. I can collaborate with the wider community. And so then it was, okay, well, collaboration is a great skill set. What's the metaphor here? And of course, as it turns out in my own life, I have the perfect metaphor, or what I think is the perfect metaphor anyway, is that collaborating is like dancing with a partner. And yes, I'm a competitive ballroom dancer, so I could take ideas from what I learned there as a dancer. Yes, I'm collaborating with one person, my partner, but actually, when you dance, there's other people on the floor. So you have to effectively collaborate with everybody else on the floor for you all to be effective in whatever the outcome is you're getting, whether it's winning a competition or just having a nice time dancing socially.
Yeah.
So that then became the basis of Thrive, those 3 skill sets. Now, you mightn't be into gardening or driving or dancing, but the metaphors make it a little easier for people to relate the skills to something else. And you can substitute, something else that might work for you if that metaphor doesn't hit the mark.
Yeah, and I really like the metaphors. Actually, it enables you to connect so much better. And it's interesting that second section in the book talking about that challenge skills. And if anything is happening at the moment, it's certainly challenging for a lot of people, particularly for managers and leaders, as we work through sort of different working environments and potential stand down and then restart for the organisation. So. I think, driving through that or negotiating and navigating through that, I think is going to be very interesting times. I do want to focus, though, on the third section, which is think like a dancer, that whole collaboration skills. And as you say, it's not only with your team, your peers, and then outside of the organisation as well. I really like that metaphor. And I mean, I'm a terrible dancer, so I've probably got some things to learn here too. Uncoordinated, gangly sort of movements that I have are probably in the collaboration space as well. So can you sort of, can we unpack that a little bit? Like what are the challenges when it comes to collaboration? And I suppose what I'm thinking here too is sometimes it's not innate in the culture of an organisation. Sometimes, it can be quite siloed, or people can be quite protectionist of their roles and responsibilities. So what are some of the hacks? Do you have some sort of good tips on driving collaboration or being the leader when it comes to collaborative efforts?
You're so right, Pete, that a lot of organisations actually might say they encourage collaboration, but look at the way that people's performance is measured. It's usually the individual, not their ability to actually collaborate with others. And yet we know that collaboration drives continuous improvement. It drives innovation in organisations.
Yeah.
You know, if you get together, if you have a group of people who are all the same, let's pick engineers, for example. You know, your group of engineers, group of smart people, you put them all together to try to work on something, to improve something, to solve a problem. The chances are they're all going to look at it in the same way. Yeah. Whereas if you put together a group of people, let's say from all the one organisation, who all have an interaction with this problem, but you get somebody who's from the sales team, somebody who's from production, someone in customer service or in the admin side or HR or whatever area it is, somebody who's been there a really long time, someone who's brand new out of uni, who's just joined, who you might go, well, they know nothing about this. They don't know all the history, and they actually can come up with some great ideas because they're not stuck in that mindset of, I can only look at it one way. They're coming at it from all these different angles. The challenge, though, is that if you are a leader, and I know that we're looking at this recording for people who are in leadership positions, but also those who might aspire to be, that we think of leaders as people who know the answers to things. You know, people come to you with a problem, you know, we often feel we have to tell them how to solve their problem. But really collaboration is about, well, nobody has the answer. We've all got parts of it, and we all need to work together in a way that brings out everybody's strengths, that we can try and solve this or come up with something new and different. It's not just about solving problems. Sometimes it's about, how do we take this to the next level? You know, we've got this great idea, but we're capitalising on everything that we could be. And so we often train leaders to be almost infallible, you know, that you must have the answer. You don't want to say, I don't know. You know, I know as a presenter, you have to learn very early on that as soon as you act as though you know the answer to everything, that's when an audience member is going to test you. I'd much rather go in and say, look, here are some ideas that I have. Here are some things that I've seen work for other people. And I'm a great believer in giving people multiple options rather than saying, here is the one way to do it according to Karen. Because as soon as you say that, there's going to be somebody who'll go, oh, but my situation's different. Oh, I tried that once.
Yes.
Where if you come in and say, look, here's a few different options. Some of them are my ideas. Some of them are other people's. Pick the one that works for you, or make a hybrid of all of them and put it together to suit your situation. Then people are far more likely to be open to doing things differently. And that's really at the heart of collaboration. It's being able to get together with a group of people and go, oh, I'd not thought about it like that before.
Yeah.
You know, but my mind said, oh, I've always thought about it like this. Oh, you just changed my perspective. And it's not about anybody being right or wrong or anybody being in charge. And that's the challenge. Nobody is effectively the leader of a collaboration. You almost take turns. And this is where it's the same in ballroom dancing. Everybody thinks the man is the leader. And we actually, when we teach people to dance, we call it, you have someone who's a leader and someone who's a follower. Traditionally, that the man leads, the lady follows. Nowadays, people, same-sex couples will dance together. You know, it doesn't matter. Somebody's leading and following. But only when you're going forwards are you the leader. So sometimes the lady's going forwards, she's leading.
Oh, I like that.
So it's actually a give and take. And that's why I liked that metaphor, that once you get to understand it, that you've got to know when to let someone lead and when to be prepared to follow.
Yes, it's only when you're going forward that you're the leader. I like that. I'll quote you on that if I can.
Absolutely.
It sounds like when we're talking about collaboration and when we're talking about leaders encouraging that, or even, you know, exemplifying what that looks like, this is a different way to think about goal setting, I suppose, because in the age of the knowledge worker, where we're all supposed to be technically expert in what we do, this is almost sort of a different way of setting goals, is it not? Because, you know, suddenly it's more about utilizing others' strengths and, you know, searching for ideas and coming out with novel solutions to existing problems. So that's a different approach altogether.
It is. And in fact, in the book, I talk about a few different factors that go into successful collaboration. And the first two that I talk about are in fact purpose and goals. Now you might think they're the same thing, but actually they're not. Because when you get a group of people collaborating, you might have the same end purpose to it, and you need to be really clear on what that is, or otherwise you get what in project management they call scope creep. You know, if you don't know this is the area that we're sticking to, it's very easy for it to start creeping out and out, and before you know it, you're including things that really don't belong there. So you've got to know what's the purpose, what's the overarching thing we're trying to do here, because you need to keep coming back to that. That's your why. You know, if we people like the Simon Sinek's of this world, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners have come across, you know, he'd start with why. So we've got to know our why. But the goals in a collaboration, it can actually be that different members of the collaboration team, if we want to call it that, or the collaboration group, different people can have different goals. They're all working towards the same purpose, but what each person will get out of it and what each person will put into it will be slightly different because their goals are different. Now, as long as those goals aren't incompatible, you know, if one person's trying to do something, I don't know, for the lowest cost, and the other person's trying to do it because to them it's all about making the most money, maybe those aren't quite compatible. Yeah. Or one's doing it all about helping people and the other's doing it all about making money. You know, that could be incompatible. But within the purpose, people on the team could have different goals in mind. And so there's nothing wrong with that. They, you know, like a Venn diagram, they can be overlapping. So that, you know, you and I might have some areas where we've got in common, but then other areas where we go, well, no, that's not common, but it still fits in such a way that we can work together on this.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of De Bono's 6 thinking hats as well. You know, people have potentially different motivations and different agendas as well, but you can still drive towards a common goal or a common end, even with those approaches. Yeah.
And as I indicated before, when I talked about that example with, you know, a group of engineers versus a mixed group, you want a mixed group. Yeah. You want people with the different thinking hats on them, because that's when you're going to get the most interesting ideas.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
Rather than everybody thinking the same way, and then you get that problem of groupthink. Oh, well, I don't want to be the only person to say something that's different to everybody else. And I have seen this so often when I've gone into an organisation. I've done, for example, worked with teams to do strategic planning. So senior leaders might decide, hey, let's get our team leaders involved, introduce them to how do they do planning with their teams. But they've never done it. They've never done it before. And sometimes they all sit around the table, are nervous they're going to say something that the senior leaders don't like. And I have to be the one as the outsider to introduce new ideas or to throw a question and go, look, I'm the outsider. I know nothing about the technical things you do in your business. But as an outsider, as a potential customer even, I'm going, well, why haven't you thought about this? Or what about that?
Yeah, what if?
And sometimes you're talking about, you know, that metaphorical elephant in the room that, oh, we can't talk about that. Well, if you want this to work, you're going to have to talk about that.
Yeah.
You can't ignore whatever that is. And that's where collaboration can fail, is because there are subjects that are too sensitive that no one wants to go near for fear of offending somebody, when you're never going to be able to collaborate if you can't talk openly and honestly about all of the things that are impacting your purpose.
It is about that environment of trust and that vulnerability, or the permission to be vulnerable as well, isn't it? So it's always challenging, I think, in organisations where you're trying to break that paradigm of let's just incrementally change the way we've always been doing things, as opposed to let's re-examine the way we've been doing things from the ground up.
Yes, because the problem with the incremental change can be that it's like, I don't know, painting the walls in your house. Or I saw a great one recently on a show. They were wallpapering over walls, and these people were coming in to renovate this house, and they actually ended up with wallpaper this thick. There must have been 12 layers of the stuff on the walls.
Oh my God.
Because all that people have done is put another layer on and another layer on. And that's what can happen in organisations, is that instead of truly looking at a process, a product, a service, and saying, look, if we were starting from scratch, what would we do? We simply wallpaper over things, glue things together that aren't working, rather than pull away those layers. And that can be cultural, political, that oh, well, you can't touch that because you'll upset someone. They designed that 10 years ago. Well, I'm sure it was great 10 years ago, but that 10 years is a long time in any industry, and things have changed. Think of the things we didn't have 10 years ago. Think of today versus 10 years from now, how different the world's going to be. You have to be willing to let that go. And that's why I think you need a process to work with when you collaborate. It's not just throw people in a room and let's have a chat fest and throw some ideas around.
Exactly.
You've got to have a process. There've got to be different roles that people perform, whereby, we know that someone's leading the process for now or facilitating it, but someone else is recording things. There are people who come up with ideas. There are people who, to come back to De Bono, that black hat thinking of this is what could go wrong.
That's right.
Those people all need to be heard, not because they're trying to get in the way, but because they're trying to have a robust discussion. Because with collaboration, you've often got stakeholders at the end. They might be senior leaders, they might be customers, it might be the government, who you have to be able to present your idea to. And when you pitch it, you need to be able to demonstrate that you've thought through all of the potential risks and downsides. Because if you haven't, if you've ever watched Shark Tank or any of those sort of shows, you'll know that the people you're pitching to will come back at you straight away with what appears to be your weakness. And you need to have thought that through and be willing to say, yes, there is a small risk here, but this is why we've decided that it's worth that risk. And we've had a robust discussion around it, not just somebody gone, cross your fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah. And just trust in the process, please. So this is an interesting time, I think, and I mean we're speaking in the midst of the COVID-19 sort of remote work sort of situation. So people coming back into the workplace, I think it might be at this time a really interesting opportunity for people to rethink and examine the way things have been done, and potentially refresh what they've been doing as well. Now, I did want to talk about, you have also wanting to make an offer through your website. So I know on your website, which I'll provide a link for, you've got ebooks there. You've got 5 ebooks actually, and the latest one being Thrive. So would you just like to talk the listeners through what you're proposing for the Thrive ebook?
Sure. As you said, we're living in interesting times, and sadly, the one thing that a lot of team leaders need right now, particularly if they've been thrust into the role at the last minute, maybe because some people are out sick, they've lost staff, whatever it is, this is the very time that they need new skills. And yet you and I both know that the first thing that goes in any sort of crisis is training and development. So what I wanted to do was to say to people, look, ebooks are the way to go. It's the easiest thing to get to you. I am happy to give anybody who needs it a free copy of the ebook version of Thrive. So you can go on the website, and you can see the details there of Thrive and the 4 other books that I've got. If you can buy them as a bundle, quite cost effectively, or if you just, I'm just going to keep it simple because we all know how technology can go wrong so quickly. If you email me and include in that the name of this podcast, which is, Peter, remind everybody.
Leadership Reflections.
Leadership Reflections. If you say that you heard about my book Thrive on Peter's Leadership Reflections, I will send you a free copy.
Fantastic. And it's not quite to the stage yet where you have Morgan Freeman reading the book on audio book, but it's very easy to read, very easy. I really like the simplicity with the way you've set out your ideas as well, and it flows really nicely, and it's practical tips It's not, like you say, it's not heavy on theory. It's got a great theoretical backbone, but it's practical tips using analogy and imagery, and giving you options for what you can actually apply today. So that's what I like about it.
Exactly, and you can sort of dip in and out of it. That you might just need one section right now, and you might even only get one idea from that one section. But if that helps you in some way, and I'm a big believer that you don't have to take everything and use it all at once.
Yeah.
Because if you try doing that, chances are it won't work, because you're just making it too difficult for yourself. So a little idea here and there could make you 10, 20% more effective, and that could make all the difference right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a great offer, and thank you very much for making that available. And I think this has been a really interesting exploration of things that are really relevant for what we're going through at the moment, particularly as we try to sort of collaborate and connect in a different environment. A lot of virtual connections going on. I think it's going to change a lot of relationships in the workplace, and I know your work does, and I know your books do as well. So thanks again for your time, Karen.
You're welcome.